So I have no idea how he actually sold sanitary pads. But that's the fun fact about John, in which he will explain himself. And anyone watching on YouTube later on will have to start this video from the sanitary pads part, because that is where he started recording. All right, the next person that I wanted to introduce to the panel would be Sandy. Sandy is currently the product designer at Lazada. She's a recent graduate from National University of Singapore. So I believe some of you here who are students can relate to her and have some questions for her as well later on. Her fun fact about her is that, before Lazada, she actually used to work in a warehouse at Easy Buy. So her experience with warehouse and logistics and all the e-commerce is not it's not really new to her as well. Last but not least, we have Josie. Josie comes from a very extremely diverse background. I don't want to talk a lot about that, but she's currently based in Hong Kong, worked previously in Shanghai. She was born and raised in Seattle, and obviously traveled across and worked in some parts of the US as well. I'll share more on that. She's currently a senior product designer at Neat. Yeah, and so that's a little bit about the three speakers here. I'm going to open up the floor to start off with Jonathan for a little bit of quick introduction for himself first, in case I miss anything. Jonathan, you want to add on anything from the side?
Yeah, well, thanks for that introduction, Felix. I don't know how to top the fun fact. But one thing that I did learn from that experience is having to do market research, because to actually sell something, you need to learn about stuff. So going into like supermarkets, trying to pick out stuff, and just talking to women about something I have completely no idea about. It's like completely new territory. So yeah, it's a thing that I took out from that, like quick research and stuff like that. So like what Felix mentioned, I'm currently the design director at Back of Singapore, looking after design standards. So things around like design systems and also beyond that. So been in like agency startups before, but prior to this experience, I've worked in like a couple of larger companies like WeWork and Visa as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here today, John. Sandy, you want to go for it, Sandy?
Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy. As what Felix said, I just graduated. I won't say just, but I graduated back in May from the National University of Singapore, majoring in material science and engineering and innovation and design. So I have two majors, and somehow I ended up in design here. And previously from Lazada, I also did my internships in Shopee, as well as some startups called Mindfire in Singapore and Vembla in Sweden. Yeah, so that's just a brief introduction about me. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments, I guess.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Awesome. Josie.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. So thank you for the introduction, Felix. So as he mentioned, I'm from the US. I lived in New York and then Shanghai and Hong Kong. Actually, I started my career in advertising and have transitioned into more digital products and then eventually UI, UX, and then product design. So I work at Neat, which is a fintech. It's a B2B startup here in Hong Kong, where we work with businesses, SMEs, global entrepreneurs, and we provide digital financial solutions for them. So we provide a Visa card as well as a digital account. So I'm really happy to be here. And I think Felix missed my fun fact, but actually I'm a certified yoga teacher. So health and wellness is very important to me. So on the side, I also teach my colleagues yoga and meditation at work. So anyone who's also interested in health and wellness and just a diverse background, come chat with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josie, for joining us. And sorry that I missed your fun fact. I was probably going a little bit too fast. Okay. I want to start off today's ground by sharing a little bit on some of the things that I want to ask the mentors here, and obviously all of you, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to just put them in the comment section, and then we can get the ball rolling. But first question, right, for all of you is that how did you get started in the UX industry? And what were some of the sort of like major difficulties that you might have faced while coming into this industry, right? I know that some of you are new, some of you have been here for a couple of years already. Just wanted to get some perspective about how you started, and then what are some of the things that that were challenging initially for you. So if anyone want to kickstart that.
Yeah, I can go first because I've done this for a while. I'm trying to recall because this was like years and years ago. So I think when I started out in the industry, I was actually my career actually started in the UK in London. So I was actually doing a degree in like visual communication at that point. And I came out. I wanted to be doing more like branding stuff. But you know, I came out during the market. It was a height of recession. No one's hiring. I was like struggling to get like, you know, get rent money to pay for the rent. So spent 6 months unemployed after graduation, trying to figure out things like that. I was at the point of like, shit, I do need to kind of pick up, like maybe pick a part-time job, work at Starbucks or something like that. And this was me coming from, you know, after graduation, you know, students going to overseas, right? So picked up anything I can find. Digital was a big thing at that point. So like picked up the first job that came along that gave me a chance. And that point was MySpace. If you were in that era of MySpace, so MySpace was there, and then they gave me a job, and then went into that. And 3 months later, I was supposed to go for full time, but there was a mass laying off. So great start to a new career. So yeah, it was an interesting time. I think looking back at it, it didn't. The degree of like what I've been through, I didn't actually expect. Like it wasn't weighing heavy at that time for me. But you know, trying to get into the first job and like transitioning, getting like getting the necessity of like paying rent and stuff like that. I think that was all it was on my mind, right? And during that time, there was no mentorship, no nothing. Like everything is basically like you go out, find something, get your foot in the door, try and hook up with someone, and get a 30-minute chat just to have that opportunity to get a job. So yeah, it was like a lot of hustling at the time.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Sandy, you want to add on?
I guess I'll go next. How did I end up being in design? I think that it was just a period of a lot of exploration, and I think in terms of I'll have to owe it to the university in a sense. Actually, my first internship was in Indonesia as a project management and like sort of like construction engineering intern. And I did that for 3 months during the summer, and I kind of figured that it wasn't something that I really wanted to do. Like I already more or less by the first year in, I wasn't super interested in engineering. I don't see myself doing it for the long term. But then I was just trying to explore outside of engineering. So I went into project management, a little bit of entrepreneurship, talking about strategies and stuff, and then also design. So during my first 2 years of university, I think it's a very good pastime to gather a few friends to attend a lot of hackathons. So during then, like when I had to do all these different hackathons and projects in my modules, we all had to fill in different shoes, and happened to have a design position. Usually when you come to making a software solution for a hackathon, you need someone to design it. So I was already kind of interested, but I don't see myself as a very artistic, aesthetic type of person. So I just tried to really try to fill the shoes of it. And that's how I kind of learned things on the way. And then after my project management internship in Indonesia, I decided to dive into design all the way, because it's something that like I felt that it was something that fulfilled me, and it's something that I'm interested in. So for my other entrepreneurship program called NUS Overseas Colleges, for the Singaporeans out there that knows, it's the other NOC. For Sweden, that was when I tried to find a UI UX job. But at the point in time, I think the biggest struggle is that I don't have prior experience. So and at the point in time also, design was like up and coming, but a lot of startups didn't need design interns. So I had to kind of co-message almost like every co-founder of a Swedish startup that I can find, to ask them for a job. Like, hey, I'm trying to go to Sweden for this. and I'm interested in your company, blah, 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 blah. So I just cold messaged it. And I think I cold messaged about like 100 plus, if I'm not too wrong. I managed to land some interviews, and fortunately, I think about 2 or 3 decided to give me a chance. And then I decided to go with one of them, and that was like a start of a 3-month internship, supposedly a year long, but it got cut short by COVID. And that's how I started my UI UX journey.
Wow, that was a really pure hustle right there. 100 over emails that you sent.
Yeah.
Cannot imagine. Thanks for sharing that. Obviously, the challenge has always been about the importance of design. I think especially in this region, I think we will dive a little bit into that. Josie, do you have anything to add? About how you got into the industry? What was some of the early challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I guess it's more about your journey. It doesn't have to be linear. So actually, Jonathan mentioned Starbucks. Like I actually did start my job in Starbucks, but maybe it's very typical because, I'm from Seattle and Starbucks is from Seattle. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, actually, I started at Starbucks when I was in high school. So when I was 16 or something. And it seems like a not related job, but actually it really teaches you how to talk to people and how to understand people, and also the behind the scenes operations and how you have to multitask, like making sure you don't burn the milk and then making sure you get this drink out of the door and it's the correct one, and all the different ways to be creative about it. So Sandy's laughing because she knows. But yeah, actually, before design, I was actually supposed to be a dentist. So something about looking at people's mouths and seeing a unique problem to each person was somehow very interesting to me. But I think I actually went to dental school for the first year of my uni, but I think I lasted maybe 2 weeks in organic biochemistry and realized that this is not what I wanted to do. So I actually jumped into graphic design, and then I switched schools because in a marketing textbook, it talked about advertising, and there was something very interesting about the psychology of users and how people think and how design influences that. So then that took me on my advertising journey. And actually the first job that I had in advertising, even though I went to school traditionally for like TV commercials, broadcast radio, back then it was like flash websites and like, billboards in Times Square. So very old school, like MySpace days kind of stuff. Yeah, if anybody is old enough to know Flash, that's what I was working on before. But yeah, basically I got very lucky because my first job was actually in digital design. So it was straight away like websites and microsites and web banners, and not actually more of the traditional advertising. So just from there, I moved very easily into like UX and UI. And although I was more of the art person, I got along really well and worked really well with the UX people. So I kind of just stuck to them my whole career. And so like on paper, I'm very visual in UI, and I never had any proper UX in my resume or my LinkedIn. So a lot of people found that maybe on paper, I wasn't as logical or thorough or kind of more in the annotations and the thinking side. So I think that was probably one of my challenges, is that your CV and your LinkedIn don't necessarily, they can't really portray everything and all the experiences that you've had and like the potential that you have if you were given the right environment. So I think one of those things is just making sure that you kind of network and working with your colleagues and making sure that you have a good relationship with all those people. And yeah, so I think one of the challenges was really just trying to transition and change my role every time I tried to pivot without having people try to box me in a way that was like, oh, but you were in advertising, or oh, you were an art director, so you can't do any UX. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Josie. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think there's a lot of sort of like, I would say like pre-intended notion about from advertising into product as well these days. So thanks for sharing that. Now I want to dive a little bit deeper into Southeast Asia scene, right? Which is why we're all here today, and everyone is in this region. And I think there's a lot of people on the call as well. I just sent out the poll onto the chat, so maybe the mentors, you want to participate as well. So how many countries are there in Southeast Asia? Now, before we dive a little bit deeper into this, I want to give a little bit of context why Southeast Asia is such a special region, and especially just so close to my heart. Yeah, try not to Google that. So Southeast Asia has a lot of countries. I'm not going to say how many, in case you are waiting for an answer. There is a lot of countries. One of the very special thing about this region versus as compared to India or China as a huge country and a huge region, and especially in the North America as well, is that this is a very, very extremely fragmented region. And why do I say that? So let's take, for example, in Singapore, super developed people here speaks English as the first language. Now, if we take a look at our neighboring countries, let's move to Indonesia, let's go to Philippines, right? People there, internet penetration might not be that high yet, as compared to Singapore. Languages might be different, culture are very different as well. Now, as compared to in the US, right, people in the Bay Area speaks English, people in New York speak English as well. Pretty much, quite universal in terms of language, in terms of culture. There is some differences, but overall, there's more similarities than are difference. Now, but obviously, Southeast Asia is poised to be one of the largest growing market for any internet penetration, and over the next few years was going to be huge, right? And by few years, I do mean like 10, 20 years, and that will come, right? So which is why we are all gathered here today to understand how important design is in this part of the region. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into the next question, and I think this is going to be for everyone. So Josie, John, and Sandy, you all have worked in these companies, and I'm sure with all your various backgrounds and colleagues, you have probably interacted with a lot of people in your own context and in your own companies. Like what are some of the biggest lessons that you have learned, working and operating in this particular region or in your own particular context of company, right? Because there are so many, contextual difference. You can design a product for Singapore, but it might not work as well for someone in Philippines. You could design a product for Indonesia, might not work as well for Malaysia. So, what are some of the challenges you face while working in this region, right? Specifically this region itself. So we'd love to open up the floor for any thoughts on that. And yeah, whoever wants to start first. John?
I was gonna hope for the people working on like the e-commerce part. Anyway, I'm not gonna include outstanding. So, yeah, I think it's interesting in terms of like how you look at it. I think someone mentioned localization, right? Localization, it's a big part of it. I think if you do work on like projects that go into like just Southeast Asia alone, there are so many different kind of languages, and treating them can be very challenging at times as well. Like even I can share one specific story about localization, getting things translated. So we're working with people on the ground, trying to kind of launch something in was it Cambodia? At that point, I think I'm trying to recall. It's either Cambodia or Myanmar, right? And what we figured out when we got the content translated from the local translator was that everything didn't work when we put it in the system, right? Because of how the most popular font on the ground is actually like a non-Unicode compliant. So actually the native font that everybody uses on the ground is like, once you put it in the system and you go to like, if you want to use like no tones, things like that, it all kind of like just goes out of whack. And like, wait, this doesn't make sense, right? And then we had to kind of deep dive into some of these things. And, we won't even know these things happen until you look into behind the hood. And I remember like there were people on from like Google side was working on issues like this as well. We're going like really peeling under the hood, trying to figure out like what was going on, right? So yeah, I mean, like there was just like one crazy part about like just localization. However, I think what I do want to say about in terms of the biggest unique point about Southeast Asia, or even like just Asia, is if you look at from a psychological standpoint, like how the human blueprint, how we deal with like emotions, things like that, it's all universal, right? But how people draw from that is very different. Especially more apparent in Southeast Asia itself, right? If you go from one example that gets people riled up in this region is you talk about food, everyone gets riled up, right? Where's the best food? So the energy that people draw from is very different, and we approach conversations very, very different, especially with business context. Going to business, a handshake can mean a very different thing. You have to understand the language of business as well in terms of like talking to people, what do people say when I actually say no, right? Or what, when they ask being straight with you, what does it mean? They're all very different contexts depending on who you talk to. So it's I don't know how to sum it up. It's hard to kind of teach these kind of things unless you are really on the ground experiencing all the challenges itself.
Right, just to maybe like poke a little bit on that question, right, John, specifically for you, and then we can let Sandy and Josie at their time. How do you resolve that understanding, right? Because there are so many things where you need to understand. Do you go and learn from your colleagues first, or do you just dive right in and then let it be? Like, what is your approach?
Yeah, I mean, you can either make mistakes by going in head in first, which we always find like you come back with like painful realization, like, oh crap, okay, we wasted money, wasted time, things like that. I think the biggest thing that I find that will help is you need to find the champions on the ground to help you and to guide you. No matter kind of where you go, right? I think having someone, for example, working in Thailand, really having the person on the ground and talking you through certain things in terms of culture, in terms of like walking through, like, I think when you go into Thailand, a lot about religion, Buddhism, there's a respect, a lot of things around there. You kind of have to know all these contexts. But then again, when you look at the other side, Thailand's fantastic because they have so many smart marketers. Like their marketing game is like, really sophisticated. They're on next level. So you have this contrast there, and unless you're at the ground to experience it or have someone to bring you inside to see it, you're not going to get that full exposure.
Awesome, thank you so much, John. And so back to Sandy and Josie. The question is, operating in Southeast Asia, what are some of the unique challenges that you have faced, and how do you approach them, right? Whether it be internally or externally as well. So yeah, Sandy, you want to?
Yeah, so I work in an e-commerce company in Lazada, which happens to have 6 regions in Southeast Asia. We cater to specifically in Southeast Asia. I think the most unique challenge is still what John said about culture. A lot of times, especially when I'm part of the regional group, we design for all 6 ventures. But at the same time, there's a lot of things to take note of. Certain things like slangs, certain colors, and even the way that people do things, they are all very different. And things like certain cultural sensitivities, like, if you are doing something that is a little bit more personalized, you must take note of certain culture. Like if they are from an Islamic culture, there's some sort of like maybe some imagery that you shouldn't be using. And then there's also like the Buddhism culture, the Hinduism culture, and all of that. And there's also things like gender itself, like because that we live in a very I guess a very diverse society, especially in Southeast Asia. There are certain countries that really cares, like they champion like LGBTQ+, non-binary people, and then there are countries that are not exactly as they don't place that emphasis there. So, having certain types of imagery actually evokes a lot of emotions in different ventures. So we could do something that is super inclusive, we include everything, but then there will be other countries that might have a problem with it because it's not, localized to them. So localization is extremely important. What we do is that definitely we run a lot of research studies, especially in Lazada. We have a core user UX research team that goes to do both qualitative and quantitative studies, find out the trends, find out certain behavioral patterns as well. And then we also hire from all 6 offices. So certain things that, that doesn't require too much resources, we will definitely ask our colleagues in Thailand, for example, like things about their lucky colors. So apparently Thailand has a lucky color for every day of the week. So those are like the small intricacies that, you as someone who's sitting in Singapore might not, be able to get that until you ask them. So certain things, especially things like colors, imagery, we always seek the opinion of the venture that we are trying to make our features for. Yeah.
Awesome. So always seek your on the ground colleagues, get advice from there before designing anything in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
definitely that. Josie, you want to add on anything from your own personal context?
Yeah, I think Jonathan and Sandy covered a lot of like external, like designing for Southeast Asia. And so I think I can speak a little bit about internally, like working within the different cultures of Southeast Asia. I know Hong Kong is technically not Southeast Asia, but we're still more south than China. But we do we do work with I mean, in my experience here in Hong Kong, I've worked in some projects with the Philippines and Singapore and also China. So I do see like Southeast Asia and Asia as a whole like quite interesting, and I think the same cultural nuances apply. And then I think it's even more so applies internally within the office, because you're face to face with these people, and you really have to confront, like, it's not just a marketing campaign or like a website that you're hiding behind, but you really need to speak with your colleagues who are from Southeast Asia or even Hong Kong, China, and everywhere else in the world, to really like understand the nuances. And it's quite interesting to see how like Western foreigners come into Asia and how they kind of approach the cultural taboos. And oftentimes I don't know, like, I think as Asians, we all know that each culture has its own like superstitions and taboos, because our cultures have it as well. But I think for Westerners, it's almost like mythological for them. Like, they don't really understand that it is really important for culture. It's more of like a folk tale for them. So I think working culturally within the office as well is quite interesting, because we also have people remotely who live in Indonesia, Philippines, Hong Kong, and all over Southeast Asia. So it is like, you also have to take that in mind. Even though that our product is Hong Kong based, we are also like serving the global market. So and also the nature of the business itself is global trade as well. So it really is like a melting pot of cultures. And so even working together, we need to be aware of those cultural differences, even if we are based in different places.
Thanks so much for that, Josie. Now, I want to dive a little bit there, Josie, especially with your experience. So, you're born and raised in Seattle, and you had worked in the Bay Area and New York, and then you flew to Shanghai, and now you're in Hong Kong. And so, very, very diverse background. Now, what are some of the things that you observe from a designer point of view, or rather just in general, like in these companies? What are, that shift from a Western culture all the way here to the Eastern side of the world, right? What are some of the main differences that you had to, in a way, overcome, or that you observed?
Yeah, I think it fits well with your question, the super app. Does it work in the Western context? Personally, I think no. I mean, maybe it has recently, but I find that, like, I don't know, especially in the US, people love like very minimal, sexy, rounded corner, flat, like really nice, like luxurious dribble type apps, which is nice. It's great. But it's very like singular focused, where it has like a very specific purpose. So like Square Cash is only for paying people, and then PayPal is only for paying people and receiving people. But now I start to see PayPal like just recently redesigned their app, and then now they're just adding all this stuff into it. Like, now I can buy crypto, I can like lend, I can do all this other stuff. And I'm like, I don't want any of this. I just want to pay someone and get paid. And like all this other stuff I can do in my crypto app or in my investment app. So I don't need to do all these things. And yeah, I really had that kind of culture shock when I moved to China, because Chinese people it's very efficient. So they want like 50 things on their screen. And then I came in as like a cute little Western designer that was like, I'm going to make this pretty. And then all the clients were like, we hate this. So it was quite the learning curve. And I had to be like, okay, well, how can I make this prettier but still functional and not piss off all the people who are using it?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think as someone who has also traveled to the US a couple of years ago, and I observed that there was just a lot of apps that served very singular purpose, very clean. I think Airbnb is one of those better examples. If you come to Southeast Asia, you see apps like Lazada, which Sandy is a part of, and it is just a huge chunk of everything together. Is an everyday store. Now, I want to get some thoughts from the crowd. I think it's a very drawn opinion on this, and it's a very interesting question. In fact, I think very relevant as well. That Jake asked. So Jake is also one of the mentors, and he's currently based in Philippines. And if you haven't seen the question yet, feel free to just dive into the comment section. Question is, does SuperX app actually work in a Western context? So question is this, right? What do you think about super apps? Grab, AirAsia, and Southeast Asia regional apps are flowing this really, really well, right? And I think this is a trend that trickled down from WeChat, right, from China. And it's something very unique as compared to the Western side of the world. I think Josie has mentioned that, Western side of the world prefer something clean, something more straightforward to the point, whereas people here prefer more efficiency and I'm able to do it all at once. And I think there's a lot of great examples about this. In India, you have Paytm, you have Swiggy who does so much things, Paytm who does almost everything. And in Singapore as well, we have Grab who is trying to be the super app of this region. Now, do you all have any thoughts? Maybe Sandy, like working at Lazada, right? Lazada being, super app. I'm not sure if it's already a super app or if it's a super app wannabe. So maybe you can give some thoughts on like how well it's working out on that.
Okay. I would just like to preface that this is just my opinion and it doesn't represent the company. Just saying that.
Yeah.
I think in Lazada is that we have a lot of partnerships with other applications that, for example, for Singapore, we have Comfort Delgro as a mini app. So you can actually book a taxi through Lazada, right? We have, for other countries, we also have like the movie theater equivalent where you can book movie tickets and stuff. I think in terms of why it works so well as compared to the US, when I was in Sweden, I think one of the main reasons probably why is that they actually, they care a lot about privacy and like individualism. So they don't really want to be giving all of their information. Like they want to give certain parts of information of themselves to fulfill a certain purpose. So when it comes to a super app that requires like maybe even like when I was interning in Indonesia, I have another friend who was interning under Grab Health. He was doing health. He was talking to doctors and stuff, to provide telecommunication services by doctors in Indonesia. And like example, if you have to give like your payment information, your health information, your whatever information, all about your life to a single company, I think that's a very unwelcome inclusion in Western countries. And I guess why it works so well in Southeast Asia definitely is that number one, value efficiency. We have very huge influences from China. We are more or less like, I guess, there are quite a lot of similarities between China and Southeast Asia. So we kind of appreciate the same things. And also like in terms of the UI and the functionalities wise, definitely we are also accounting for things like how much data does it load the whole page. So if let's say if we go with the minimalistic route in US, it will take up a lot of data to load the same exact amount of information as compared to like a Chinese app or a Southeast Asian app. So we are also catering to people, especially in the countries that the internet connectivity is not so good. So those are like, I can see why it works so well in Southeast Asia and not so well in Western. So I actually checked no, because I think like the whole thing about privacy and everything is just too strong when it comes to a Western context, and they don't exactly require a lot of information at once, unlike like our Southeast Asian and Chinese counterparts. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sandy. All right. Just for the conscious of time, I also want to leave time for the audience as well. I have two last question, and before we can open up the floor for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to put in the comment section. One question that I think I really want to bring up is that I think there are some people on this call that are maybe from India, that might be from the US, or might be from Australia, New Zealand, and might wish to actually work in this region. Especially, I know a lot of friends who wants to come to Singapore, or maybe go to Thailand and whatnot. For anyone who wishes to switch their career as a designer from a different region into Southeast Asia, right? What would you advise them? I think this is more of a question for Josie, who came from a very different background. Like, are there any initial challenges that you face that you might have done it differently? What are some things that you would advise someone who wishes to come into this region as a designer?
Yeah, I think one thing is be open-minded, and then figure out if you have like a network or somebody that within the country or the area that you want to go to. I think it doesn't hurt to reach out to recruiters or like stalk people on LinkedIn. Like, let's say you want to work at Lazada, you can stalk Sandy or other designers that are at Lazada, and you can at least message them and say, hey, I'm interested in living in Singapore, working and living in Singapore. can we have a coffee chat, or do you have any tips? And I think it's just being open-minded and being quite friendly about it, but also being conscious of other people's time. Like maybe they don't have time for a coffee chat, but they can link you up with someone else, like their recruiter. For me personally, I really use my network. And I know that takes a lot of time, but you just have to start with the people around you. And the network kind of grows into like a ripple effect where eventually it kind of merges into someone else's network. So for example, Sandy and I have a common former and present colleague. So it's definitely a very small world, especially in Asia. Like people tend to hop around between like China, Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, and then everywhere else. And then that's just in Asia. But imagine if people do that also like from Asia to Europe and then within those. So eventually like the world is getting really small. So keep an open mind, work your network. And then, yeah, I mean, if there's somewhere that you really are really fond of, like it would be good to also learn some of the cultural nuances or the differences or how to approach people in that region. Maybe it's different than how it is in your region or how it is in other countries.
Thank you so much, Josie. Now, I'll move on to the last question. And if anyone has any question, as mentioned, do drop in the comments. So, the last question would be, based on all that we discussed today, I think it's very interesting things that we have discussed today and very eye-opening as well on the region, right? I want to go to a bit more generic question, right? What are some of the, I think most people here are also starting out in their career. Either, they're looking for a job or they already have a job and they're still quite new in it, right? But regardless of the level of experience, right? What is one career advice that all of you would give to the people who are listening in today, right? It might be a leadership advice or anything of that sort. It might be a career searching advice. What is one best piece of advice that you really, really deeply believe in and you want the audience to know, right? Maybe we can start off with John.
Yeah. Okay. So I think even with my mentees and stuff like that, when I talk to them, the one thing I consistently tell them is in terms of like, especially when you're starting out, right? You have that energy, you have that curiosity, like bring all of that into the picture. And it's a good thing, right? Having that energy to kind of like try out and different things like that. But being kind of like curious about everything, you also have to put a direction, and it always helps with having a specific direction. Even though it might not work out, it's something that you want to try out. I always ask people about like, what are your learning goals for next 6 months? Putting a time frame to it. Could be 3 months, could be 1 year, right? In terms of that, you can actually structure the way you approach things. Like, how do you want to approach a job? How do you want to get the role that you want? If you want to do a research role, right? How would that actually look like? What do you want to learn from that experience, right? And structure those things around your learnings and everything and work backwards. It will usually help drive things like portfolio strategy, your job seeking strategy, like how you talk to people and things like that, because those things are really important. Like, even though if it doesn't work out, if you feel like give it 6 months a good go, and then you feel like, oh, okay, maybe research is not a thing. Like, I don't like talking to people. Could be a thing, right? Then you can basically switch it around and take that 6 months and say like, hey, I've learned something from 6 months. I learned that I don't want to be a researcher. I want to be something else, right? Maybe I want to be a product manager. So yeah, going back to that, just like having that 6 goal, give yourself that time frame, give yourself a bit of focus. It will definitely help your hiring managers, because if you go in and say like, I want to do this, they'll be like, okay, great, you've done half of the job. I can help you get to where you want to go. So yeah. Just get those learning goals, I think.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, John. Now, Sandy, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think John covered it very well. Usually, I think in my previous group session, I actually gave 3 tips, but sure. First tip is definitely like staying curious, right? Really finding out what you know and what you don't know. And because you're young or you're fresh, like take advantage of that, ask as many questions as possible. Don't be afraid to appear stupid, because people know that you're most probably going to be since you're new. I think the second one that really helped me a lot when I was job searching was really knowing why you want to be here, right? I think when it comes to this day and age where you can transit to a lot of different careers, it's probably going to be tough. There's a lot of barriers and hurdles to go through, and I'm not going to sugarcoat things. It's really going to be tough. But then because it's tough, you can get to, sit down and also reflect from time to time that if this is something that you actually want to do, because in a sense, UI UX design or design in general, or this entire space in general has so many different functions and roles. So take your time to go and explore and and also like X out things that you really don't like to do. If, for example, you really don't like talking to people, you don't really like to know about how things work, then maybe research is not cup your tea. But like if you really like certain things like logical flows, maybe UX might be a better choice than compared to UI. So these are the things that will help you to remind you why you're doing this, especially when you face rejection after rejection. But at the same time, even if you are successful, you at least know the reason why you're here, and it helps a lot in planning what you want to do in the future as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sandy. All right, last one, Josie. Anything to add on from that?
Yeah, I think those were all really great tips, Sandy and Jonathan. I think you pretty much covered all of it, but one of the most important things that I found was really about mindset and having faith and belief in yourself that you will find a job, and that you will find a job that fits your values and in a company that you like and that also likes you and values you. I think when you're first starting out, it's a lot easier because, as Jonathan mentioned, you have like lots of energy and the world is your oyster, and you're quite young, so you're not as jaded yet. But I think especially as you transition, it can be a bit more difficult. And I really think, life situations are maybe different. Like you might be changing careers after 10 years. So it might seem a lot harder, but I think it really is like sustaining the belief in yourself, and that having this positive mindset. And honestly, like it sounds cheesy, but just saying things out loud, like I am going to find a design job, or even speaking within your network, or even people that are your friends, family, like letting them know that you're transitioning into design, or that you're finding a new job, or even like talking about it in person with somebody. You never know, like the person behind you in line for coffee might be Jonathan, and he's also looking for a junior UX designer, So it really is like, again, keeping an open mind, being curious. I really believe that when you want something, when you write it down, when you say it out loud, it'll come your way, and things happen for a reason and in the right timing. So especially like trusting your gut is important. If you find an offer that is, maybe they offer you a really high salary, but everything else about it doesn't seem right, I don't think you should take the role just because, the benefits or the compensation is great. Like I think you really also need to stand by your values and trust your gut. Like if something doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't for you. So just making sure that you still believe in yourself and are open to opportunities. I think that's also very important as you hustle to find a job.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Josie.
Yeah.
So I think we are a little bit out of time. I think we can take one question. There's two questions, in fact, but I want to take one of the questions personally. I think it's more of a LinkedIn kind of thing. So that's a quick one. So question from Tenzin is, I believe LinkedIn co-message for opportunity lookout seems mysterious. Maybe he might mean daunting or something. What do you think? Are there any alternatives or tips that would be helpful? Now, I'll share a little bit of quick story about this. And so I think this is actually a more of an approach kind of issue, right? So in fact, when I was, believe it or not, when I was 16, which is, I think, more than about 7 years ago right now, I actually visited the Grab's office. Now, back then, Grab was very small, probably 7 years ago or 6 years, 8 right now. Back then, Grab was very small. It was so small that they were called Grab Taxi. So if all of you remember, Grab started off as Grab Taxi. So I was 16 years old. I remember I was brought to Grab Taxi's HQ, a very small office, and I actually met one of their senior executives there. And I didn't know he's a senior executive, right? He graduated from MIT, very, very smart guy. And I went there and I did a company tour with my class. And after that, I think he mentioned that people who are very brave and often willing to learn are people who thrive to do great things. And by the end of the trip, I was so inspired by all that he said. That one thing, right? Being shameless and asking. And by the end of the trip, what I did was that I actually went up to him. Imagine a 16-year-old kid come to you and ask you for your name card, right? I asked him, hey, can I have your name card? I want to learn from you. I want to grab a cup of coffee from you. And he gave me his name card, and then I went back to the bus. And today is 2021. I think we met 8 years back. Today he's one of the person running Grab. Not going to name his name. We're very good friends, and he's still one of my mentors today. My advice to that is simply, if you don't ask, you never know. I think you have to come from a very genuine perspective that you want to learn. One of the things that I believe in is that sometimes as people who are learning in the industry, honestly, what else can you offer, right? Like you can't offer connection because this person probably has more connections or items or network and value in the industry than you. But what you can offer this person is a genuine sincerity to learn from him or her. In the 30 minutes chat, buy them a cup of coffee. Really, that is something that is very, very important. To know that sometimes everyone appreciates certain sincerity and genuine connection, right? I think in the world where people are materialistic, there are so many things around. Sometimes very sincere learning, very sincere person is very, very hard to come by. So be that person, be that person in someone's day. So that's my advice to that. The other question that I see in the chat as well is how is the UX job market in Singapore? Maybe I'll let John and Sandy comment on that before we wrap up for today. How is the UX job market in Singapore? Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not 100% because I haven't really checked in and hired the market. But I've been following. So if you kind of seen the work I've done on the side, I've done this thing called design pay transparency, which is more like getting everyone to share salary, talk about that, anonymously. So I've been tracking in terms of the job performance in the market and how things are tracking. So if you're in Singapore itself, right, you're actually in a good shape. And if you have the skill set, fantastic, because people are getting between like 30 to 50% more when they switch jobs, because I think the market is swinging towards more employees now. So there's more say, I think could be like remnants of from what was it called, the Great Resignation or something like that in the US side. But here's more like due to policy changes and things like that, and such. But yeah, so I think that's great. There's more demand for better quality of talent. So I mean, if you're kind of looking at great time, it's competition. There's a lot of competition, but once you get your foot in the door and go through the cycle, I think you'll probably be in a good spot to negotiate a good kind of good role.
Awesome. Thanks so much, John. And I had not mentioned, but John is the founder of the pay compensation, I believe, for Singapore or for Southeast Asia. Maybe John can share on that after this call as well. Share some resource possible. Yeah. Sandy, you have anything to add on your side?
Yeah. I think it would be based on LinkedIn job postings. There's quite a lot, right? Whoever who looks on LinkedIn, you would see a lot of at least UI UX design postings up there. I think in terms of like what I can observe is definitely they are more favoring like senior designers. So if you are someone from other parts of Southeast Asia that is a senior designer that is trying to move into Singapore, I think you are in a good shape, right? But then the trend that I'm also seeing, that especially with bigger companies, is that now I guess when in terms of UX maturity in Singapore is a lot better than the rest of Southeast Asia. So a lot of companies are considering to open up to junior designers now that they pretty much have their arsenal of senior designers and design managers that could help groom and train junior designers. So that's a good move. And I do think that this current time is where junior designers, it will be competitive, but it's a very good time to take advantage of the opening up to really chope yourself a seat in the industry. Yeah.
Oh, that is a very Singaporean word to use, chope. And if anyone does not know the word chope, it means that reserve
yourself a seat.
It's a Singapore slang. All right. Yeah. I want to thank Josie, Jonathan, and Sandy personally for your time this tonight and this evening, and for some of you morning as well. I really appreciate the tips and tricks that's been shared through this session. Really, really insightful. And I recorded the session for everyone, so I will also send it exclusively to everyone once we have uploaded this to the channel as well. So thank you all so much. Thank you to the panelists for attending today's session, and thank you all so much for a great question, and I look forward to growing with all of you. And have fun designing in Southeast Asia, all of you. Thank you.